So, Andrew Huberman, great podcast, but what am I reading about here?
Okay, well, that's the question that most people have here is actually...
Yeah.
So Andrew Huberman is... he's a wellness guru. He's been featured on a number of really large podcasts. He has his own podcast that's really popular. And then recently there was a big expose published in which a number of women accused him of... Here's the pause. What? What did they actually accuse him of? He's accused of being a cad, having relationships with 6 women at the same time. Debatable. He says he's being targeted by people for a variety of reasons. But when you read the actual thing, and there's also...
So this was a hit piece.
It's a hit piece,
yeah,
essentially. And then, of course, that brings up why go after him. What is the purpose? And we'll get into it, but it really brings us back to some big moments since the Me Too movement started, where people went, oh my God, I just want to stab myself with a fork. What is this even? So here's my question for you as a criminal lawyer.
Bless you, honey.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
When you're accused of things, and in this case, they're not actually criminal that I've seen so far yet.
Nothing I've read.
And then you have to decide, when you have a profile, you're a public person, you're trying to defend yourself. What I've seen is that sometimes the act of defending yourself then all of a sudden makes people double down and you end up facing criminal charges.
Well, that's the challenge when you're dealing with people who are out in the public sphere more and have some notoriety. And so they can be targets for certain things. And then if something comes out and then they decide to defend themselves and say, this is nuts, it's incorrect, blah, blah, blah.
I've got evidence.
We've seen it that you can push somebody who is part of that narrative to go to the police and lay a charge. But I have great skepticism about any type of complaint, and in this one it's absolutely not clear, and this just seems to be a hit piece and bullshit. But when people go first to a media source to have an article written about an individual who we know is in the public eye, and he has, an exceptionally well-followed podcast, and that to me is incredibly suspicious, incredibly damaging for all the wrong reasons. This is not, I find it incredibly troubling. It's the ghost. We have a ghost in this building. Since 21 years, we've had a ghost here. 24 years?
They say, they have said before, stunning and brave, though, and again, I will repeat because I know I've said this, what is stunning and brave about going to the media and anonymously publishing allegations, without putting your name to it, is like, and this is the point that's being brought up too. What is stunning and brave about that?
I can't think of anything.
Right. But
let's examine that for 1 second, because we talked about this a long time ago in the podcast, and we understand again why it's important for people to come forward with allegations of abuse. Where there's legitimate allegations, you come forward with it. I get that. You may have to go to therapy first, but ultimately you go to the authorities, right? When you give an expose with a pseudonym or with or you're anonymous, like what the I'm missing it, and I welcome some constructive criticism to tell me why this is helpful, why this is good. I see these as incredibly damaging to the person you're attacking without any credibility. There's no credibility.
And also, because I've seen some of these, because I have my nonprofit and stuff, and I've helped people with allegations that are similar in nature, and I've seen the requests for reply from the media, and quite often they don't even know who the hell. I don't want to get bleeped. No, I'm gonna get bleeped. I don't even know who the is accusing me of what. Right. How do you answer it when you don't even know who the accuser is? Sometimes, sometimes you get enough information where you could reasonably put together a reply, but then also, like we're saying, like these can lead to criminal charges too. And what you say in public, like what do we always tell people? Don't give a statement. You give a statement to the media, it's the same as it's worse than giving a statement to the police sometimes. What do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, if there are statements that are made in the media, and assuming you can establish the authenticity of those statements, it can be extremely damaging to the credibility and reliability of the complaint when they come forward. But more importantly, it also goes to motive. I find it, again, I'm repeating myself. Going to the media is not the first step. Going to the authorities is the first step. That's what you do. If somebody's been abused, whoever it is, you go to the police for help. That's what they're there for. They'll do some sort of an investigation, and then charges may be laid, and that's how you deal with it. If along the way people need some therapy because something's been particularly traumatic, absolutely. But I don't see how there's some cathartic value in giving an anonymous story.
Cathartic is a great word.
To a newspaper, and then I just naturally recoil from that. And then I also don't understand why people who may have certain notoriety and are in the public and they're doing, this podcast is excellent. What is his personal life necessarily, short of something really being criminal? What the does it have to, why?
Yeah. Well, there's,
what does it have to do with anything?
There is this narrative that, popular, successful people get away with things because they have money. And the reality is the reason that we should turn a little bit of scrutiny towards these, be a little suspicious about these, is that celebrities can be targets because they're celebrities. So there is some, it doesn't tell us anything because somebody, is a celebrity or isn't a celebrity, whether or not they're guilty of something. But I think I do want to make the point that there is a higher likelihood that somebody's going to say some bad shit about you just because you're a celebrity and they want to get some fame off it.
Absolutely. It goes for sports figures. It goes for commentators. It goes for actors. It goes for podcasters. I mean, this piece by Megan Murphy is very, very good.
Okay, so Megan Murphy, I just got to say, I know Megan. She's an amazing person. And when I first met her, we were almost like, I wouldn't say arch enemies, but we were at very, very different perspectives of how these kinds of allegations worked. And then Megan has gone through a journey of her own, and she's now doing like incredible work. And she wrote this great piece where it was so perfectly neutral about the values and the problems to Me Too. And she makes a really good point that I want to highlight, is that when you get to these allegations that aren't even criminal in nature, is it not undermining she has some great comments about the #BelieveAllWomen thing, that she's saying, you should believe people sometimes, but believe all women all the time. She makes a great point about how this is not a proper approach to trying to bring attention to the real issues that we're facing in society. And so anyway, kudos to Megan, and I'm so happy to see she's enjoying her life in Mexico. I believe she's
she's made some very good points when she was speaking about the Me Too movement. And it's like anything in life, something comes out and it's all the craze. And, there was a lot of important sort of evolution about, because in the past there's truth that when female complainants came out with allegations, they were, sloughed off as being, revengeful or bitter, and there's no automatic reliability to it. But then it became obviously too much, because you can't have #WeBelieve and believe all women no matter what. And there are a lot of people, as much as she says here in this article, and I get the argument, it's become a bit cringe. If you dig down, there still is a tremendous amount of #Believe. Like, it's not gone. So I was reading this and I was thinking, from our own microsphere, it's not gone. I mean, if I post something about a wrongful accusation, I get immediate blowback from lawyers in Toronto and other places saying I'm spreading a myth that there are false allegations. And then we still get it often with respect to some investigations and prosecutions where we have to accept it and just move forward regardless. So it's not gone.
But we had this wonderful case in Canada, the Nisnik decision by Justice Molloy, where she directly addressed this #Believe thing. She said this is not a legal principle, nor should it ever be.
Yeah, it's excellent. Yeah.
It's a great decision and explains it really well.
All our written submissions, but the first page quotes directly from her judgment.
But like Megan wrote here, and I love,
she's
got a great, she's got a great way with words, but she says, indeed, the phrase "believe all women" had turned out to be stupid.
Yeah.
I love Megan. Although its heart was in the right place. And so I like that, because the heart of that idea, oh, it's in the right place. We want justice for victims. The problem is that the hashtags and the phrases became an assumption that there was a victim.
That's right.
And that's where
it was a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and that's where it parts ways from the process of the legal system.
Well, you know, she quotes in her article or highlights in her article, you know, Stephen Galloway, whose life was turned upside down. And we've spoken about it, but there are good points about how people's lives were ruined and destroyed through anonymous allegations of abuse that was never corroborated. He is a horrific example of that, whose life will never get back on track because of what happened. You know, when we see a hit piece like this come out against, you know, Andrew Huberman, it's equally concerning, although he will, you know, fare just fine. But
I think he probably will, because
I think he will too.
As has been mentioned, the allegations aren't even criminal at this point.
They're not even criminal, and you know he's. But this is what bothers me about these type of anonymous allegations and abuse. The mischief that it causes is life altering. It's literally life altering.
Yeah. And
I just don't understand that if, you know, and you can't even battle back against it. You don't know who said it. Are you going to sue? If you sue, you can get vilified for even doing that. And then you're right, it can turn into criminal after that and be a false accusation. And then you got to have the bumpy road of going through the criminal justice system.
You want to double down. But, you know, the first thing that crossed my mind when I heard about these allegations and looked at the nature of them is like, it just takes us back to Aziz Ansari, where this was a rising comedic actor whose career was taking off really well. And then there was a ridiculous piece, and I say ridiculous now because I think everybody's come to agreement on that. We'll talk about the SNL skit on it. But he was essentially accused of being a bad date. And then he was like deplatformed and lost opportunities in his career for being a bad date. And it was so ridiculous how it was not even really an accusation, that the Saturday Night Live did a skit, like some dinner party skit, where they're going, oh, well, don't bring that up. Stab myself with a fork. Because nobody wanted to say Me Too was going too far. Right? As a friend of mine said, me too far. But you know, it's like, we have to ask ourselves, like, at what point is it okay?
Bill Burr did a good parody on it in Paper Tiger. And he was talking about, now, you know, you're late for a date, you know, career over, you know, stuff like that. It is too far. But can I just want to circle back for 1 second? Because Megan Murphy says something really good, because we're talking about anonymous. And this is, I think, what caught you and I and made us most concerned about it, because we see it and what damage it causes. The accusations against Huberman are flawed from the get-go, as they are anonymous. And as much as I imagine this made sense in order to protect the women, exes of the podcaster from lawsuits, I don't think it's fair to make an accusation on that basis. Speaking out, telling the truth, going up against the powers that be demands accountability in order for there to be genuine legitimacy to a challenge or claim. Of course it's a risk, but that's the point. Without the risk, there is little impact. What an anonymous Twitter user says should have significantly less weight than what a person with a name and a face and something to lose says. Mm-hmm. Yes, Miss Murphy, you are 100% correct.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, I mean, it's a difficult thing to do, but the reality is why say anything unless you want to put a name and face on it? I mean, it's like, you know, you have to weigh out the value of what's being said, and there's a reason that we say that you have the right to face your accuser in court.
Yeah, well, CCTV.
I
get to cross-examine
a what's thing. Even funnier, though, when we talk about getting into these cases where it's not really criminal, and, you know, there was just a bad date. And then it also reminded me, as I printed out, that New York Times actually published an article called "He Asked Permission to Touch, but Not to Ghost," in which they tried to claim that it was some sort of a, you know, abuse of their consent. Actually, the culture of consent. one woman argues, should be less about self-protection and more about genuine care for the other person. So she's like, he was over the top. He asked, can I undo this button? Can I touch you here? Can I touch you there? To the point she's like, this is kind of weird. But, you know, she's like, okay. But then he stopped answering her text messages, and she goes, I did not give permission for that. And that is the thing. How far do you go?
Well, that's the problem that we face all the time, right? That's the problem with how do you navigate what is the law now.
Can you see my angry face?
Yeah, no, I see it. But that's the problem. How do you navigate in human relations proper interaction between people where they're enjoying themselves with what's criminal? How do you navigate that? Because as I've said, the courts and the government is in our bedrooms now, more so than ever. And so some people, if they're overly sensitive to the news, overly sensitive to following criminal cases, to understanding the laws around sexual assault, maybe saying, you know, my God, I have to really take steps to make sure I have consent. So I'm asking this, I'm asking that. And the other party might go, well, this is hardly romantic. You know, we were parsing apart human interaction, one of the most intimate, you know, things you can imagine. And there are people who are struggling with how do I enjoy myself? How do we enjoy ourselves in a relationship? But I'm concerned about being accused of something. And then we see in cases when it does become a criminal case and a man is testifying and saying, no, I asked consent. I asked if I could do this. And then the judge goes, oh, that's contrived.
Nobody does that.
Nobody does that.
I know.
But you know, you can't be disbelieved because of that. So thankfully that's the case. But that's what goes through people's heads.
Yeah.
You know, a judge or a jury. I don't know. Again, I don't think we've gotten better right now as to how we marry up human nature and relations and what is truly criminal. I just, there's still a disconnect there that I think a lot of people are very worried about. And I just think it's a shame.
I mean, I worry too. Is like, are we going to come up with a new law talking about how many girlfriends you're allowed to have?
Well, that's what it seems here. I mean, it's if you're, you know, if you're a cad or a rogue or whatever you want to call it. First of all, what does this have to do with his podcast? How's
Nothing.
it relevant?
He's not doing a podcast about relationships and how to date women respectfully.
That's right.
Or something like that.
I can see something being relevant if you're espousing a certain, you know, narrative, and then you're doing something completely different to what you're saying. Yeah, then you're a hypocrite. So
well, this is one
people
of the
want to
comments
come out
being
with that.
made. They said, well, his health regime must work because he can keep up with 6 women.
Well, yeah, that'd be. But how is that? Who f***ing cares?
I know. It's just somebody who's influential. The way it looks is somebody who's influential, and they just wanted to take away some power. And there seems to be almost a fetish with taking down successful people, especially when they're self-made.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. I think we should entitle this one, "What's Bad About the Anonymous Claim?" I can tell you everything, and I like
it. Is
I really
know. She nailed it.
She nailed it, and. You know, without the risk, there's little impact. But you know what? There can be a lot of damage, right? And when an anonymous Twitter uses, you know, or says it in a media or something else, it should have no weight. And that's the concern, that we still see this, because it is life-altering sometimes to some people, and it can cause incredible damage. And if it's made to a person in an academic setting or in a hospital setting, let's say they have a position in a hospital, anonymous allegations can cause that person, even though it might not directly happen to them, their career can be over. Yeah. They can still keep their job, but try and get that position where you're the head of a unit or something. It's not going to happen because that came out, and it's too easy to damage people this way.
For somebody whose employment depends on
reputation,
on an employer who's subject to advertisements and attacks from they're trying to advertise a product, and so all of a sudden their company name is going to be affected. That's like almost automatic death for somebody. But thankfully for him, he's mostly self-employed. He has the ability to keep going.
And and I used to think, in Canada, we were a little bit more balanced than other countries where media is everything. Where media is so powerful. we've got lots of problems with our media in Canada now, more than I've ever seen. And I don't think BJ would disagree with me. But I always used to think that we were much more balanced and measured in Canada, and not quite like other jurisdictions. Not so much anymore. Things, you're starting to see the desire to not necessarily get it right, but just get it right for today.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know.
Well,
Another episode.
We'll see how it plays out. But for now, it's not currently illegal to be an asshole.
No, it's not. But leaving that aside,
and we don't even know if he is.
It's really bad to have anonymous claims, in my opinion. All right. Pillow talk.
Right. If you like our podcast, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, tell all your friends about it, and leave us some comments.
And send us those messages again.
Comments. We do actually read comments.
We do, and we get great questions. Thank you. Good night.